Welcome to Purpose After Sports, where we interview athletes to share their post-sport journeys and explore how they are reinventing what it means to compete. Today we have Bates Diop.
How's it going? Great to be here.
Yeah, so happy to have you. So we've known each other for a little bit now. Yeah. Basketball player, runs in the family. Let's talk about how Kai got into sports and that journey.
Absolutely. Well, basketball is kind of just always around. I played a little bit of like t-ball and flag football growing up, but basketball was the main sport. I just remember like early days being in like 4 seasons, watching my brother and my dad do workouts, and when I was like not able to play yet, I was just kind of too little at that point. So seeing 2 people in your family do something at a pretty high level at that point. My dad had played college. My brother was getting a lot of attention at this point as a high schooler. So, or I guess at that point he was more so in middle school. But it just felt natural for me to go into basketball. And it just really clicked. It was really fun. I love the camaraderie. I love the competitive spirit. I love the culture of basketball. So I kind of got into it. It was probably, around 2nd or 3rd grade when I started playing. So definitely early on. But yeah.
And how tall were you in 2nd and 3rd grade?
I can't remember. I was definitely the tallest in my class. I had goggles, all that. I had my own look. So yeah, I definitely was the tallest in my class at that point.
But it was basketball. Basketball was a sport. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're through elementary school. Junior high was still basketball. Did you try anything else?
Once I got to middle school, it was more so focusing on basketball. Yeah, t-ball and like flag football was kind of more so just like I'm a kid and I need to like be around other kids. From my parents' perspective, I'm sure. But yeah, once it was middle school, it was definitely focusing on basketball and working out a lot. 4 seasons. Started to weight train a little bit around that time as well.
Yeah, and would you say in that time of being in basketball, family was definitely influencing it? It was your decision, or?
Yeah, I would say it was my decision. It was like positive influence from my family. Just because my parents had always emphasized like doing other things besides sports outside of basketball. So there was always an emphasis on like education and reading and just broadening one's horizons. But basketball was a healthy way for me to like engage with sport and overall physical activity and other kids.
And in junior high, everything was fine, right? Like we're playing, no injuries, anything like that?
Yeah, nothing major. Probably just a few ankle tweaks here and there, but no type of major injury at that point, no.
Okay. And let's get into high school. So we're a freshman and we go to U High. How is that jumping into basketball? You're ready, getting on the team, feeling a lot of pressure maybe? Yeah,
so at this point there was a lot of nerves, I'd say, like as a freshman in high school, just because I knew there was a lot of expectations for me. I was putting a lot of expectations and pressure on myself, which is a part of that sport culture. Like most people want to have some type of threshold they're trying to reach. But when you have like a dad that, played college basketball, your brother's becoming one of the best players in the state, there is a lot of like pressure and a lot of comparison that's being put onto me. So I was actively trying to fight that comparison and also coming to my own as a 15-year-old who's trying to figure out who he is just in life in general. And I also want to set myself apart from a competitive standpoint through basketball from my brother. So freshman year was a great year. Like I definitely grew a lot, learned a lot. Had some really good moments like throughout practice and with my AAU teams where I could see myself kind of set my own path. But freshman year was a great year.
Okay. And let's go a little bit further and talk about sophomore year of basketball.
Yeah, so sophomore year, the year was going really well. Had a really good inter-city run. I feel like we were probably struggling a little bit from a team standpoint. I can't remember our exact record and all that type of stuff, but we had a solid showing in inter-city. I remember the State Farm Holiday Classic was a good thing for me. I played pretty well in that. So I'm gaining traction. I'm going on visits. Took a couple of high major like Big Ten visits at that point. Coaches are coming to my open gym, so I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like this is the path I'm supposed to be on. I'm setting myself up to have that opportunity to play college basketball. As life would have it, right? Something outside my control happens. So a normal day in my sophomore year of practice, we're going through, I believe it was 3-on-2-on-1 drill. I came out of one of those rotations, and this is like one of those drills we kind of start practice off with, so it's not super high intensity. We're kind of just getting warmed up before we get into our like 5-on-5 or at least 4-on-4 segments.
Yeah.
And so I remember coming off one of those rotations and just felt my heart beating super fast. So right away that was a red flag, because it was like, well, I shouldn't be feeling this tired. I'm one of the most in shape guys on the team. I'm doing 2-a-day workouts. I'm doing strength training on the court with stuff outside of U-High. So once that happened, I said to one of my teammates, like, my heart hurts. Like it was beating that fast. It was like it had never beat that fast before or since.
Yeah.
As soon as I say that, I collapse. So I lose consciousness. I had some amazing graduate assistants, so people getting their masters in athletic training at that point at Illinois State. And I remember saying to Trey Mortimer, was the person who I said my heart hurts. He immediately ran to the athletic trainer's office, which was through the big gym, through the small gym at U-High.
Yeah.
And so at this point, I've collapsed, and they had some amazing training. So that what they relied on was their training from their instructors and faculty, and operated CPR on me for 4 to 4.5 minutes, so I didn't have a pulse during that time frame. Wow. And then once that time period was up, they hit me with the AED. I responded to the first shock, and so it went from me saying my heart hurts to this stretch where I had no control. It was kind of just nothing. And then waking back up, looking at the gym floor, and kind of just being like, oh, what happened? As people kind of crowded around me, I'm on the ground, and kind of just went by like that. But it was the most significant point in my life at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you for talking about that moment. Yeah. We wake up from the floor, and what are the next steps? Do you remember any of that? Was it just chaos, or I don't even know what happened, or?
Yeah, I remember the school principal was there over me. I want to say one of the athletic directors was there as well. Yeah. I can't remember if my mom definitely wasn't there, because she was on the road because she was visiting my brother at Ohio State, because that was where he was enrolled at the time.
Yeah.
And she was driving back, so she had to drive 5 hours, like hearing about this, get in the car, drive 5 hours to go see your son. Yeah. So I can't imagine what that car ride was like. But yeah, I'm on the gymnasium floor, and I wake up, and I was just in general confusion. From that point, I was put in the ambulance. They took me to some hospital in Bloomington, just for a few hours. I remember I saw my brother there, I believe, just briefly. Some of the details are fuzzy. There's certain things I've remembered over time and certain things I've forgotten over time, but phone was blowing up, all that type of stuff. And I was in that hospital only for a couple of hours. Then they airlifted me, so they put me on a helicopter to Peoria. And I remember that. It was like I could look out, and I was like, oh, I'm in a helicopter right now. Yeah. So I'm still trying to make sense of what's going on. I don't know any details at this point. And so I get helicoptered to Peoria. That's where I do my rehab. I'm there for a week. Either that night or the next morning, all my family members are there, mom, dad, brother. Yeah. And, they make it clear, hey, like, this is what happened. Your son went into cardiac arrest. He has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, so that's a condition that is essentially athlete's heart. So athletes generally just have more of a thicker heart because they have more adrenaline pumping through them. They're working harder than the average sedentary person. Okay. And so I had an exaggerated case of that. So my heart walls were so thick that blood wasn't able to pump out of my heart into my brain, and vice versa. So that's why I collapsed. That's why I blacked out. Yeah. So they tell me that. They say, based on the severity of the incident, the recovery time to make sure that he can still live his life and excel past this point, being 16 years old, having a near-death experience, is going to be wise that he does not play college sports and deconditions his heart at that point. So as a 16-year-old, that was really, really hard to hear. That was heartbreaking. Put a lot into that goal and dream, right? And then it was one of those things where it was like, okay, do a 180 now. And so, I would say being in that hospital was a life-changing experience. The whole thing was a life-changing experience, of course. Yeah. And so a lot of it was, what was me? Not understanding why it had to be me. Growing up, hearing the, common things in sports and in life, but especially in sports is, practice like this is your last practice, play like this game like it's your last game, all that type of stuff. So for me to have experienced that and be the only one amongst, my high school teammates, all my AAU teammates, all those guys were, you know, starting to get recruited, and they pretty much everybody that was on my 15U team played somewhere post high school.
Yeah.
So it was hearing that, but then living that was it was a very layered experience for me. So that's kind of how that hospital time went. I spent a week in the hospital.
Yeah.
The second to last day was when they did the surgery. So they put in like a fail safe for me. So I have like a little small ICD is what they call it. So it's like a defibrillator and a pacemaker combined. That kind of serves like a fail safe if anything were to happen.
Yeah.
And 7 years later, I haven't had a single arrhythmia. Haven't had to be paced down in terms of my heart rate being too low or too high. And yeah, that's kind of what came of that.
Wow. Obviously grateful for that staff and everyone was there that helped you. Do you think sitting in that hospital, even though hearing you can't, like we really don't want you to, was there inside of you, there's got to be another way that I have to, or you accepted it, you soaked it in at that moment?
Yeah, I can't say I accepted it in that moment, no, but I don't think I was fighting it.
Yeah.
I think I could understand that was a very real situation that I just experienced, and
yeah.
You think about when you're 16 years old, you're still, like, your brain is still developing for the most part.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was trying my best to make sense of it. I think I'm almost to the point where I fully have like realized what happened and like have accepted it as a 24-year-old at this point. I've had a lot better days like since being a 16-year-old, but yeah, in that initial moment in that hospital, it was more so just me being grateful to be alive. Like it was like I literally just died. Like I almost died. Like I did not have a pulse. There was the smallest amount of electrical activity still present in my heart that the AED was able to magnify somehow, and I was more so just very happy to be alive, which was a lot for me to think about because it was like I never thought I'd be in this state where I'd be so grateful to be alive in this hospital room.
Yeah.
So that was a tough thing, but I had people that came and visited me. People dropped off food. I don't think I had a single hospital meal, which was love between like my parents' friends, like my friends, their families. So I can't state how much that was special to me. I had a big, there's like 3 or 4 sheets of like poster paper that people from U-High like wrote, get well soon, Kai, we're thinking about you. I still have that in my apartment. So it was little things that got me through it, but I think I was in that space where I was ready to accept, like, it sounds like I need to take some time off because I don't want to mess around with this. I don't want to be too attached to the athlete identity to potentially lose my life or worsen my health condition. So at that point, I was pretty set on like I'm gonna trust these doctors and I'll figure out something else to keep myself busy. That's kind of what I was thinking.
That's huge. We have gone through therapy and you're through physical therapy, and through that stage. How was the rest of sophomore year going for you? Are you lost? Are you trying to figure yourself out? And like you said, find other outlets? How does it go?
Yeah, sophomore year was a hard year. I would say sophomore year and junior year was kind of a blur, but one of my best years, I'll say, like just kind of mad at the world a little bit. I was trying things. So I tried like photography. I thought I was going to be, doing like mixtapes maybe for people or being the workout video guy potentially. So I tried that. Got into poetry, got into photography in terms of just taking pictures of nature around me. Like I had walking out of the hospital, like I remember like walking to the car after they released me. I got my surgery done. I was good to go. They had my medication set. It was like that first breath of fresh air. I knew something was different because I was like, I really almost just died. I was 16 years old. So I was trying anything and everything. I didn't care about like any opinion around any type of topic. So between poetry, photography, video stuff, tried golf for a little bit. Like I was just trying things out. None of those things really stuck, but they were important for me to try them out and just see how I might like it. That's the point of trying. It's just you might like it, you might hate it, you might hate it, but you at least tried. So I spent a lot of time just trying things out, and then from a physical standpoint, I had to decondition myself, so I really couldn't do much physical activity, and that was the hardest part. I realized how much I loved physical activity in that moment of like, I can't even really get on a bike right now or, you know, go for a jog or anything like that, just because, you know, from the doctors, they want me to really like just relax and chill. So that was a hard part for me. It was just not being able to express myself physically, because that's what it ultimately came down to. Like as athletes, as children, whether you're a child or you're an adult, if you're playing a sport, that's one way you're expressing yourself.
Yeah.
And so being as a 16, 17-year-old, that was my main thing of like, oh, well, basketball was how I used to express myself. I'm not exactly sure how I can, you know, do that now. So that was a hard transition to make throughout sophomore and junior year for sure.
Okay, so did you have trouble with being around the sport at all? Was it hard to watch kids your age playing something that you love? Did you kind of maybe try to put yourself outside of that aspect, or?
Yeah, it was tough. Sophomore year, I wasn't around as much as I was junior year. Junior year, I would come watch like practices and stuff, and I think I was doing some type of like stat keeping during games. And that was hard. That was when I probably was at my most negative in terms of my perception of the stuff going on around me. There was a lot of that, like, how come so-and-so is playing and I can't play? Like, I work harder than them. All that type of stuff. That wasn't necessarily like productive. But yeah, you know, as an athlete, you have that competitive nature, and so when you can't fully express that, then it's hard to just watch and like look and see people do things where it's like, well, I can do that, but I shouldn't right now. So that was a hard pill to swallow. But then things kind of flipped in terms of me being able to do these checkups with doctors, and you know, them telling me that like, hey, your heart is reducing and it's swelling like significantly right now, so you can get back into some more physical activity. So that right when I was starting to get really frustrated at, you know, kind of just watching things, that transition was made to where it was like, because you have sat and watched things for a while now, you can start getting back into some stuff. And then that's really when I started to experience some really positive things like through this experience.
And that's like a huge life thing as well, translated into life, is you might be struggling for a really long time, but it's right where that maybe you feel like you might want to give up, or where it's like, I don't know how much longer I can do it, where it's a sign, something's coming. And it might just be a little sliver of hope, but no, that's huge. So we are still going through high school. How did senior year go? Did you know, like, I still wanted to be around the sport, or what were your decisions next?
Yeah, at that point, I didn't really know, but I found some type of gray area to where I wasn't too upset. I mean, I can't say I wasn't too upset, but senior year was fun. Like, I had a really good friend group. At that point, I was practicing with them, so I wasn't, like, I would suit up, I think, be at a lot of the stuff and practice. I would just hop in like some of the drills just for fun. Like, I didn't really do like 5-on-5 with them, but at this point, like, so we think about junior year, summer going into senior year, that's when they're telling me, like, at this point, it's like, hey, you can, you know, do pickup games now if you'd like your heart is, you know, really reducing its swelling. We have seen no arrhythmias. So that was a really good time period for me to where it was, you know, me asking them like, hey, can I hop in practice and do some stuff with them, like drill wise? And they're like, yeah, go ahead. So I'm like, okay, great. So I'm practicing with my team, with my friends. I have a good social circle. I'm thinking about next steps. So I'm thinking about college. I'm realizing like, this is not going to be my entire identity. This is not going to be my entire life. I'll eventually end up going somewhere where, you know, nobody necessarily knows like what this, you know, moment meant to me. I'll have to explain it to them, because in Bloomington it was like people kind of already knew like that was going on. Plus it was, you know, your brother is the best player in town type of thing, one of the best players in the state, in the country. So it was like a lot of attention surrounding that. Now it was like, oh, the younger brother, you know, almost died while he was playing basketball. Like, so he was gonna be so-and-so, like all that type of stuff. So then I was able to get away from that and be like, I can make my own path. So senior year, it was like, if I could put one word on it, it was optimism. It was like, I was very optimistic. I was getting back into physical activity. I started to see that importance of understanding that body and mind connection. One thing I didn't mention about my junior year was that I spoke to a sports psychologist that was at Ohio State, and that really flipped the switch for me in terms of getting me to think about my situation a little bit differently.
Yeah.
It was really a therapy-based conversation. It wasn't true sports psychology, but it was just what I needed that kind of gave me that boost to look at my situation a little bit differently. And
would you mind sharing some of the things that they said?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just a very casual conversation. It didn't feel like therapy. It didn't really feel like anything that was formal. And I think that was the style of that sports psychologist.
Yeah.
Actually, I know it was that style of that sports psychologist. And so his intention was to make it as informal as possible. So I remember he related it to, he said something along the lines of, so basketball is that ex-girlfriend that moved across the street from you or something like that, and you just can't really get away from it, and it's there. And just similar conversations like that, similar analogies, just really got me to think about my situation in different contexts. I kind of was able to take a step back, and really productive for me as a 17-year-old. And so I have a great perspective of therapy and all that type of stuff. So yeah.
What would you say to anybody who's maybe nervous to getting into asking for help or just trying something like that out?
I think just trying it out.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a lot of the times in life, it's just a matter of putting yourself out there a little bit. And especially if it's a private setting, like, you have the power to leave if you hate it. You have the power to, reach out and say, hey, I'm just not sure if that was what I was looking for. Reach out to see if, friends, like support system, family, if they at all could be a substitute for that, if you maybe don't feel like you need it. But if you are wondering or pondering about therapy, like, I think it'd be a great thing to try out. Because therapists have so many different styles and techniques and principles that they're kind of fueled by. So just to say, like, one experience with one might sway, your opinion of therapy. I can understand that, but no therapist is the same as another one. So I would say just try and put yourself out there and let the dice fall where they may.
I like that. Yeah. So in senior year, did you have any kind of fear getting back into being more physically active? Was there that fear factor, or you were just ready to go? Yeah,
it's always there. It's still there. Just every time I engage in some type of physical activity, there's just that little nugget in the back of my mind that remembers that, because you have to think, like, I experience my heart beating really, really, really fast, then I almost die. So then it's like, when I get back into that, whenever I'm on a cycle or just jogging or maybe doing like light resistance training, all these things are kind of floating through my mind of like, okay, am I going too hard? Like, I got my Fitbit or Apple Watch on, look at my heart rate monitor. I'm really interested when I have my next checkup to see if I have any arrhythmias. And so it was me getting that like performance result of, okay, you went through 3 months and you worked out X amount of times and you didn't have an arrhythmia. Like, no matter how tired you felt or how uncomfortable it felt from a biological standpoint, like, you didn't have any arrhythmias. So that helped me, but there was always that kind of just like fear in the back of my mind, like I should be okay, like, hopefully I'm not pushing it too much. And that was a constant battle of like, I'm gonna, rise from this and be great despite. Let's make sure that we're not pushing it too far. So it was trying to find that middle ground there.
And then how did you decide on your college and that process?
Yeah, that was one of the happiest days of my life, was learning I got into college, because that was like a piece of like, I'm gonna move on and there's gonna be something, out there better for me, and this isn't gonna be my, this won't be the only thing people like know me from. And so Butler was a good chance for me to experience something outside of Bloomington. It was close enough to where I feel like I'm far away from home, but my parents would still have time to come visit me if they would like to. So it was around like 2.5, 3 hour drive there. I had been familiar with Indy. We had some family there. And when I drove through Butler's campus to visit, it was a small campus, but I just kind of saw myself there and figured out that I wanted to still be around basketball. I kind of took that step of like learning about a manager position and what they do, and I thought I'd be pretty good at that. My main goal with that was just to try to get like one player better. I was like, okay, so I'm understanding that they're in practice, and you know, if I'm around the program at that point, I'll likely want to be able to get extra shots up with guys or something like that. So that was the main intention from like a basketball standpoint of like, I just want to be of service and value in this program and help out. And then Butler academically is a really good school. Somewhat of like an unofficial Ivy League, like really good in terms of like the Midwest region as well. And yeah, it kind of just made sense.
Going into your manager position a little bit, I love your perspective on it, but was there ever times where it wasn't that positive, where you're seeing things or maybe not getting, you know, taken seriously at some points, and like you maybe having to defend the athlete you were?
Yeah, a little bit. It wasn't everything. It wasn't anything that I couldn't handle. The first year was pretty calm with that. I was able to help out some guys that were looking for help in terms of extra work, like after practice or before practice. I remember my sophomore year, I was like, I wouldn't say like challenged, but people were like wanting to like play me in one-on-one and stuff, and I think that was a form of like them trying to see if they could respect my game type of thing, which I respected that, and I think that helped me out in terms of certain relationships that were formed there, but it wasn't ever anything that made me uncomfortable. I had chances to prove that, like if I'm doing like a rep of, you know, like a lot of times it was like I was the primary ball handler, if it was like with the bigs working on their like ball screen coverage or ball screen work, or being a passer, or maybe playing all-time defense or all-time offense. So pretty quickly I was able to get on court, and you know, it was like, okay, I've done this motion before. I'm not gonna be able to finish it because I have to pass it, but like up until that point, it was like, oh, I'm just hooping right now. So it felt pretty natural, and I didn't have too many instances where I had to, you know, completely redo something because it wasn't done well enough or anything like that. And it felt really natural, and it just helped me know, like, okay, like, I can still, like, I can get up and down with these guys. Like, I can still, you know, go. And yeah, that was like a really important thing for me too, was seeing that, like, seeing myself, like, be okay with that and not be too worried about, like, oh man, I should be out there. Like, it was more so like, hey, I'm helping out. Like, things seem to be going all right. They're not subbing me out every other rep or anything. So, yeah.
Do you, going into that program and maybe even in life now, is it something, the event that happened to you, that you do have to tell, you know, around maybe people you're active with, or it's something that you don't worry about?
I like to be pretty upfront with people. Like at Butler, like I kind of told most of the coaches my story at that point. A couple of them I kind of already heard about it because the head coach for Butler was an assistant coach at Michigan while he was recruiting like my brother, so he was kind of aware of that. But yeah, I let people know like my situation, but at that point it had been 3 or so years of, you know, no arrhythmias. Your heart is about 97% healed back to its regular thickness. I feel good. Like there's no instance of like me having something that happened and I'm trying to hide it or anything like that. It was like, no, I genuinely feel good. So since like Butler and even now, like if I'm in certain gyms or working out with people, like I had my internship at this sports performance facility, like I let him know that day one, and like, hey, this is my situation. Feel great. Like I can do all this stuff. I can demo it. I can do it. And yeah, so I definitely like to be upfront with people for sure.
What would a piece of advice, or getting into a manager role, if someone's like nervous but still knows they want to be a part of a team in some way, what kind of steps or advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say try to contact who you can within that program. You'll get your first taste of the power of networking. I don't know how I feel about that word, but that's kind of a little bit of what goes into it. And yeah, be ready to kind of do whatever that helps the team out. It wasn't always, you know, pretty. I had to like wipe up sweat off the ground and, you know, put worn practice jerseys in hampers and stuff like that. So I like didn't love that, of course, but I was willing to accept like what came with that position. So that was maybe 10% of like what came with that. But yeah, if the people that want to, you know, potentially be managers or work in a support staff type of role, you can look these things up, like do your research on what people have done in those roles, and connect with other athletes that they know that might know other people that know managers. But yeah, I would say just, again, it always kind of comes back to putting yourself out there and taking a chance on things. It's not always very clear cut. Like in school, middle school, high school, college a little bit, but definitely like middle school and high school, it's more so clear cut of like, you're going to do this assignment, this is the outcome, or you're going to do this and this is the outcome. But as you progress past those stages, there's a lot more of like, you might not exactly see where this goes, but you putting yourself out there will really mean a lot once some time passes and you start to make more and more sense of like what you're doing. So just put yourself out there and contact people within that industry, is what I'd say.
No, that's awesome. Networking is so important, and as soon as you can learn, and you might not be good at it at first, but as soon as you can learn and be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, then that's the first battle.
Absolutely, yeah.
So your college career in athletics, sports, were ups and downs. What were the highs? What were the lows?
Yeah. So I had 4 seasons at Butler, I would say it was 4 seasons of manager work, right? 3 seasons of like for sure manager stuff, and then my last season there was a coaching change, so I was a little bit more in like a graduate assistant role, but it was all under the guise of support staff, manager work. Highs, I would say there's a couple of highs. Like one would be, hearing from somebody that I spent a lot of late nights in the gym with and early mornings in the gym with, helping him try to be better, going like pretty hard in these workouts. Like it was about me playing, as much as I can in terms of like simulating what he might be going against. So me trying really hard and seeing that he responded to that positively and appreciated that and would, consistently ask me to help out with stuff. And then a year or 2 later, once we're out of Butler, getting that text that like him formally saying like how much he appreciated that and how much, that helped him become a better player. So that was really cool. It wasn't about me getting that like validation, but hearing that and seeing that was something he appreciated, like definitely meant a lot to me. That was something that happened like last year, I think. So that was one high. And it was Big East basketball, so I got to see some great players. I saw some great environments in terms of like a crowd perspective. I think we had a home game against Villanova, and there was a buzzer beater that Kamar Baldwin hit against Villanova, and people stormed the court. I don't know. Okay, there's 3 then. People didn't storm the court for Villanova, but the team like stormed Kamar afterwards. And it was just looking around Hinkle. It was like, this feels like a movie right now. Like the energy was just on 11. And then another high moment I'll say was when we beat Xavier my last year at Butler, and the fans did storm the court, and that was really fun. Lows would be, having some unfortunate losses and having to take a plane ride back from, Storrs, Connecticut, or Omaha, Nebraska, and there's not too much chatter on those buses or plane rides. And in those moments, I'm thinking about, because at this point in my undergrad years, I think I want to be a sports psychologist based on my interaction. I was like, that's it. If I could align myself to be on the other side of this table and impact somebody going through something similar with the whole recovery from injury thing, like, I think that'd be really cool. So when we would have those long plane rides back after a loss, and I might be on the computer doing some type of like coding or filming for the coaches, or I would say coding the film for the coaches. It was thinking about like, okay, is this what I really want to do? Like, is this what I want to be around, type of thing? So I had to work through that and just understand like not every team is going to have a Cinderella season by any means. If you have an average season in college, that's great. But a lot of teams, are below 500. So it was me accepting like, hey, if I really want to work in athletics and be around this, like it's not always going to be pretty. So I need to figure out what my type of self-regulation methods will be. I can't just be mad because everybody else is mad. I have to figure out like accepting it, wanting to be better, wanting to see what I can do. Like I remember after losses, I would like in my mind, I'd be like, okay, what can I do better? Like I should have been, more locked in on X, Y, Z during practice, which is just the athlete in me still talking.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say those were the highs and lows.
And what did you graduate with your undergrad?
So I had a psychology major, and then I minored in Spanish.
Did you really?
Yeah, I came into Butler as a neuroscience major. Quickly changed that. I took, I don't know, what was it called? It was the fundamentals of genetics.
Yeah.
And you would not have guessed that that's a fundamental course by the way that was set up. So I had to pivot there.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I think psychology will do it. And yeah.
So I know that you were in your master's program still currently, but kind of talk about wanting to continue your education, what it's in, steps.
Yeah, so I graduated in December of 2022 from Butler, right, with a bachelor's in psychology, minor in Spanish. And so I knew that I wanted to do some type of postgraduate education.
Yeah.
And because it was based on that interaction with a sports psychologist, all my stuff that I was experiencing through sports. So I gathered that I needed a master's in sports psychology to do what I wanted to do, because I thought I wanted to be a sports consultant or a sports psychologist. The main difference would just be a sports psychologist is somebody with their PhD, and then a consultant is just somebody at the master's level.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know all of that until I got to UIC. But I finished in Butler for my undergrad in December 2022. Since I was on track to graduate in spring of 2023, I was a semester early, so I took a post-undergrad certification in strategic communication. So that was like a 4 or 5 month program.
That's awesome.
So that allowed me to work as a graduate assistant with the program and stay on with them.
Yeah.
And then so I was officially done there in April of 2023. And at this point, I thought that being a graduate assistant with another men's basketball team was what I wanted to do. Tried a few things out, learned like, hey, maybe not. I think I need to just go to UIC and be there in Chicago. There's going to be ample opportunity for whatever I'm interested being in Chicago.
Yeah.
So decided, it was kind of late because I was just seeing about other potential avenues, but decided I'm going to go to UIC in July of 2023 and started my master's program last year, August 2023. So that's a master's in kinesiology with a sports psychology focus, which was great for me long term because as I'm gathering information about sports psychology, I called probably near like 10 or 12 sports psychologists and just picked their brains about, why they do what they do, how they got there, what the credentials are, how they overall like their profession. So gathered a lot of great information there, and I was learning that, there's people that have sports psych with mental health backgrounds. So they might do their sports psych licensure and get a licensed clinical social worker licensure, or a licensed professional counselor. So I was kind of playing around with the idea of maybe getting another master's and having those two toolboxes to work out of. But it really came down to me learning that at the college level, which was the level that I want to be at, the level I still want to work at, if you're a sports psychologist or a sports psych consultant, on average, you're only really able to be on site maybe, 2 to 3 hours a week. Or if you go from a month standpoint, 3 to 4 hours a month with people in terms of like observing and kind of being around. I'm not sure what it looks like from meeting with those athletes specifically, but just from that standpoint of like, I'm only really around the program, those, on those metrics, I felt like I wouldn't be able to fully be myself and fully extend the way I wanted to. And so I was just thinking about, okay, I'm here getting my master's in kinesiology with a sports psych focus. I'm not sure if I want to be a full-go sports psychologist. But what if and that's how they're thinking about, support staff roles. So you got the nutritionist, strength coach, AT. Strength coach. Strength coaches, are there every day. They're there, an hour or two a day. And so I realized that I wasn't behind if I wanted to go down that route in terms of working towards that certification and getting experience in that. And through people I met at Butler, through valuable relationships I made there. One of the assistant coaches that was at Butler for 2 years while I was there, or I'll say a year and some change, he left to go be a head coach at Evansville with their men's basketball team.
Okay.
And that's in the same conference as UIC. And so I'm like, hey, what's up, coach? I see, that you play UIC tomorrow night. I assume you have shoot around today. Can I come by? He's like, yeah, for sure, pull up. And in my mind, I was like, I definitely want to see head coach, but I want to, talk to their strength coach guy and see kind of what that looks like. And it was a young guy, maybe he was a year or so older than me, and he was their full-time graduate assistant strength coach. But he had, the full-time role of being a strength coach. He was getting his master's at the same time. And he just made it sound like it wasn't impossible at all. He was like, hey, you should just work on getting a couple of internships. So this is back in January. Work on getting a couple of internships, see if you like it. I think the sports psych component will be really, helpful for you. And kind of just took that and ran with it and was able to get 2 internships this year for strength and conditioning. And so the goal is still, like, from that conversation I had as a 16-year-old with a sports psychologist, in a therapy type of conversation, the goal is still to be able to, be of service in that context of, like, being able to have that conversation with people, athletes, especially student athletes, of, yes, we want you to be successful, we want you to have certain goals and expectations for your life, but I can have that conversation when, stuff doesn't look like it's that easy, and you have to talk through those things that are going on behind the scenes. And so matching it then with the hard science of exercise science and knowing how to program and periodize workouts and all that type of stuff was an added bonus, because that stuff has always really been fascinating to me. And I, in hindsight, I was able to see how much I loved being able to, once I started getting back into physical activity, go on a bike for, 45 minutes. Like, I remember I loved doing that when I was 17 years old, once I was getting back into it. And I was fascinated by how my heart was recovering, and like, oh, I can do these workouts. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me right now. So then I was like, okay, I'm really matching up an interest I had. I just didn't fully explore it, but it's always been there. And so now, I'm in my second year. I'll finish up this coming May, and I've had some really valuable experiences through strength and conditioning so far, and looking to build on that momentum, learn and grow, and just really kind of match up the 2 buckets that I'm working out of between strength and conditioning and sports psychology.
And you graduate in this coming May?
Yeah, this coming May, yeah.
Okay. And do you have anything maybe set or that you're thinking you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to have options. So I take the gold standard for strength and conditioning is having your, certified strength and conditioning specialist licensure, which is called CSCS. So college, high school, pro, that's kind of, if you have that, you can at least apply for the job pretty much. Or similar related licenses under NSCA. And so I plan to take that exam for the CSCS on February 4th. And so the goal is to, take it February 4th, start applying to jobs late February, early March. And that's going to be, D1 through JUCO, anywhere I can start, graduate assistantships. If I can't do that, stay in Chicago, work out of a couple of performance gyms or group fitness, personal training gyms, maybe do an internship on the side, but just trying to learn and grow as much. So I'm totally fine with me not landing that dream job, straight out of my master's program. It'd be great, but I'm ready to continue to learn and be of value in, like, whatever space I occupy. So that's kind of the general outlook right now, is just to have options.
Yeah. Have you always had a positive outlook on maybe not reaching that goal right away, or like potential failure? Not saying that not getting a job is failure, but you know what I mean, that fear.
Yeah, I think that's something that has been cultivated over time. Like, we all have to start somewhere, making sure you don't attach yourself to certain external things that aren't really fulfilling has been huge. So it's like, intrinsically, if I, land at, some not very glamorous D2 school, like, there would be absolutely no issue for me to do that, because if I have the correct knowledge and experience and overall perspective I'm bringing into that space every day, in my mind, it can be, whatever it is. Like, it can be that professional job I want one day, or that D1 job I want one day. Like, it doesn't even really matter, because it's like, I'm just going to try to be as great as I can within this space. And that's something that was built out of, what I experienced as a 16-year-old. It was like, I'm not going to be able to get to a better place mentally in one day. Like, this is going to have to be a process that I maintain step by step, day by day, through knowing myself, learning about myself. So I'm really just taking that exact same thing and applying it to this. obviously there's a lot of talk around the process and loving the process, but in life, sometimes those things that seem corny or seem like, oh, I've heard that before, sometimes that's really what it is. Like, people will say that because they've lived it. So that's what I'm just trying to get to at this point.
Can we talk about some of your work that you've done with AEDs and any information that you can provide to the audience about that topic?
Yeah, so we've raised, in the state of Illinois alone, at least over 10 AEDs. Because the thing about Illinois is that it's not a funded mandate to have an AED in any type of space where there's potential for an AED needing to be there, which is unfortunate. So there's spaces like gyms, recreation centers, schools even, that don't have an AED because it's not a funded mandate. So if it's like if it's that community or school or recreation center or whatever can't pay for it, it's like, well, it's not funded, so if we can't provide ourselves for it, then we won't be able to have it. So my mom and I, saw that would be really unfortunate if there was a similar instance for somebody like me that goes into cardiac arrest and there's just not an AED on site, and they can only do so much with CPR. That would be, really, really unfortunate if somebody were to experience something like that. So I'll say my mom, we did the majority of the work on that type of stuff, but I helped out where I can, because her background is kind of in that philanthropy, fundraising stuff, great people person. But yeah, we have, fundraised for over 10 AEDs. They cost a few thousand a piece all over Illinois. Just trying to make sure that kid can have another chance at, doing what they want to do or continue to live their life outside of, what they might only think they see themselves in. Because I can't say I only saw myself as a basketball player as a 16-year-old, but that was a large part of my identity for sure. And it was that second chance that was awarded to me that allowed me to see I can, be much more than that and still love basketball. So it's really just about presenting that opportunity to people.
Do you think there's any piece of advice that you would give to somebody maybe in, maybe not your exact situation, but maybe a career-ending injury or something that's limiting them from doing something they love, how to look at it and something like that?
Yeah, that's a tough one because it's hard for me to give advice on that type of stuff, just because there were so many different factors at play, and if it's anybody else, there's going to be so many different factors at play. And so I think if I had to pinpoint it down to one thing, I don't want to keep coming back to it, but it's proving to be the most relevant thing right now, is that put yourself out there to experience all that you can experience. There's people in this world that don't care about sports, that don't care about art, that don't care about science or STEM or anything like that. So the whole, it can feel at times like whatever you care about is what everyone else cares about. But that might not really be the case. So it's, if soccer is your sport and you went through some type of, hopefully it's not near-death experience, but some type of career-ending injury, it really is just taking that time to figure out, how else can I see myself in this world? How else can I express myself in this world? Because I was able to express myself, or at least try to express myself through those other things of, poetry, art, photography, video, now I love going to art museums and going to film festivals or different music festivals, because in that moment it was this is fun, this is a great way to spend my time. And so I think the only piece of advice I can give to people is just put yourself out there, see what's out there in the world, and through those experiences, you start to gain a little bit of confidence, because you realize that not everybody else will put themselves out there like that.
Do you have any advice that you'd give to current athletes, just in general?
That are in injury status, or?
Just current athletes.
Just current athletes? I would say with the state of college athletics, learn to develop a love for whatever sport you're playing. Because as you continue to play your sport, whatever level you're at, if it's high school, middle school, college, the way the world not revolves around sports, but the way the world interacts with sports, it's changing. It's not what it was 6-7 years ago. And make sure you can develop some type of love that allows you to still see it as a game. It's really interesting to think about all these grown adults playing children's games, right? Making a lot of money, like supporting their lifestyles, like helping their communities, all that type of stuff is great. But at the end of the day, these are games that people are playing. So figure out a way to remember that it's a game that you're playing, and maybe add something else onto your plate that is related, unrelated, but try something that will make you remember that you're playing a game and you put a lot of time into this game and you perfected your craft, or you're trying to perfect your craft.
Yeah.
But remember that there's a lot of things out there besides that one sport.
That was awesome. I like that. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely.
You were awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I think that your situation was not ideal, but you have turned it into something great. And Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the people?
Stretch out before your workouts. Stretch out before and after. Mobility.
Mobility.